I am standing in front of my empty desk at 5:30 in the morning, watching fluorescent lights reflect off the polished glass surface. There is a white envelope in my hand, my resignation letter. The weight of it feels both heavy and strangely liberating. 7 years of my life poured into this company from summer intern to senior manager. My father once told me that blood is always thicker than water. But today, as I place this envelope on the bare desk, I realize he was wrong. There is something thicker than blood, something more valuable than family legacy. It is called self-respect. Before I tell you how I got here, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted most, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to show you what happens when you choose your dignity over everything else. Now let me take you back to where it all started to fall apart. Sterling and Company was not just any manufacturing business. My grandfather built it from nothing back in 1978, starting with a small workshop and a dream. By the time my father James took over as CEO in 2005, we had grown into a respected name in precision aerospace components. We employed over 150 people and pulled in around $30 million a year. The factory floor hummed with the rhythm of machines cutting metal to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Every part that left our facility had my family's reputation stamped on it. I was 28 years old and held the title of Senior Operations Manager. But that title meant nothing to me if I had not earned it. I started as a summer intern, while still in college, sweeping floors and learning the difference between a micrometer and a caliper. After graduating with my degree in industrial engineering, I joined full-time at the bottom rung. No special treatment, no shortcuts. I wanted every person in that building to know I belonged there because of my work, not my last name. My relationship with my father was built on mutual respect. I remember being 10 years old, sitting in his office, after hours, watching him spread blueprints across his desk. His thick fingers would trace the lines as he explained how each component fit together, how one small error could cascade into catastrophic failure. Those nights shaped who I became. He taught me that excellence was not negotiable, and that integrity was the foundation of everything we built. He used to say, "One day, all of this will be yours, but you have to earn it, not inherit it." I believed him. I believed in him. Then came August of last year, and everything started to shift. My father hired Brooke Castellano as Director of Business Development. She arrived with an impressive resume, an MBA from a prestigious school, a decade of experience in corporate expansion, and the kind of confidence that filled a room before she even spoke. She was in her early 30s, always dressed impeccably, and spoke with the practiced precision of someone who had spent years perfecting her pitch. Her job was to expand our market reach, to forge new partnerships, to take Sterling and Company into territories we had never explored. My first impression of Brooke was professional neutrality. She seemed competent, driven, maybe a little too intense for my taste, but I figured that energy was what we needed for growth. What caught my attention, though, was how quickly she built a rapport with my father. They would spend hours in closed-door meetings discussing strategy and vision. I would see them through the glass walls, James leaning forward with interest, Brooke gesturing enthusiastically with her hands. There was a chemistry there, a meeting of minds that seemed productive. Brooke often stayed late at the office. I would pass her door at 7 or 8 in the evening, seeing the glow of her computer screen through the frosted glass. At first I admired the dedication, but as weeks turned into months, I started noticing a pattern. The private meetings with my father became more frequent. Sometimes when I knocked to discuss production schedules, James would wave me off with an irritated gesture, mouthing later, while Brooke sat across from him, her expression unreadable. The first real crack appeared in February of this year. Part of my responsibility as operations manager was reviewing quarterly budget reports. I had a good head for numbers, and I liked to understand where every dollar went. As I scrolled through the entertainment expenses under Brooke's department, something felt off. The numbers were not astronomical, around $15,000 over 3 months, but the receipts were vague. Client dinners at expensive restaurants, consulting fees for unnamed advisors, hotel conference rooms booked for meetings that produced no follow-up documentation. I cross-referenced the client names with our sales team. They had never heard of most of them. No contracts had been signed. No deals were in the pipeline. These phantom clients existed only on expense reports. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. This was either extreme incompetence or something worse. I decided to approach Brooke directly before escalating to my father. Professional courtesy. Right. I knocked on her office door one afternoon, carrying a folder with highlighted discrepancies. She looked up from her laptop, smiled that practice smile, and gestured for me to sit. I have been reviewing the quarterly expenses. I began, keeping my tone neutral, and I noticed some inconsistencies in your department's client entertainment budget. Could you help me understand these charges? Brooke barely glanced at the papers I slid across her desk. Those are relationship-building expenses, Wyatt. You would not understand. Your generation thinks everything happens over Zoom calls. Real business still requires face-to-face interaction, wine and dine the human touch. Her tone was condescending, dismissive, like she was explaining basic arithmetic to a child. I understand relationship building, I replied, keeping my voice steady, but these clients do not appear in any of our sales pipelines. There are no contracts, no proposals, nothing to show for these expenses. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. That is because I am cultivating long-term relationships. Rome was not built in a day, Wyatt. Your father understands this. He approved every single expense. Perhaps you should take it up with him if you have concerns. The meeting ended with me feeling dismissed and vaguely insulted. But more than that, I felt uneasy. The way she invoked my father's name like a shield, like a warning. I decided to keep watching. March arrived, with the kind of cold rain that made the factory floor echo with dripping sounds from the high ceiling. I was working late one evening, finishing a production report when I needed to access a shared file on our server. As I navigated through folders, I stumbled onto something that made my blood run cold. It was a subdirectory I had never noticed before, labeled External Consulting. Inside were invoices and quotes for services rendered by a company called Castellano Consulting LLC. I stared at the screen for a long moment before the connection clicked. Castellano. The same last name as Brooke. I opened invoice after invoice. Market analysis, strategic advisory services, competitive intelligence reports. Each one billed at rates that would make a top-tier consulting firm blush. The descriptions were vague enough to mean nothing and everything at once. And the total, when I added it up, came to $95,000 over the past 8 months. My hands were shaking as I typed the company name into Google. Castellano Consulting LLC was registered in the state of Delaware. The managing member listed was Antonio Castellano. A few more searches revealed that Antonio was Brooke's brother. She was funneling company money directly to her family's business. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. This was not just a conflict of interest. This was fraud. This was theft, dressed up in corporate language and approved signatures. The question that burned in my mind was how much my father knew. Had Brooke fooled him completely, or was he somehow complicit? The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I became a ghost in my own workplace, quietly compiling evidence while maintaining my normal routine. I took screenshots of every invoice, every email thread where Brooke requested payments, every vague description of services that produced no tangible results. I pulled bank records, something I had access to because of my operational role, and built a timeline that showed how Castellano Consulting's billing coincided with absolutely no improvement in our market performance or new contracts. I also started carefully talking to other employees. A junior analyst named Trevor pulled me aside one day in the break room, his face drawn with stress. "Can I ask you something in confidence?" he whispered. I nodded. Trevor told me that Brooke had pressured him into backdating some expense reports, making it look like certain purchases happened in different quarters to smooth out budget variances. He was terrified of losing his job if he refused. I assured Trevor that I would protect his identity and that he had done the right thing by telling me. By late March, I had built a case that would make any prosecutor smile. The evidence was clear, documented, and damning. Now came the hard part. I had to present this to my father. I scheduled a meeting for a Friday afternoon, choosing a time when the office would be quieter, when we could have privacy. I prepared a binder with every piece of evidence organized chronologically with summary pages that laid out the scope of the fraud. My hands were steady as I walked into his office, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. James sat behind his massive oak desk, the same desk my grandfather had commissioned in 1982. Behind him, framed patents and industry awards lined the walls. He looked up from his computer, smiled warmly, and gestured for me to sit. "What have you got for me, son?" I placed the binder in front of him and took a breath. "I have discovered some financial irregularities that I need to bring to your attention. They involve Brooke Castellano and a company called Castellano Consulting." His smile faded slightly. I walked him through it methodically, showing him the invoices, the lack of deliverables, the connection to Brooke's brother. I explained how the supposed consulting work had produced zero measurable results. I suggested that we needed to conduct a formal audit and potentially involve our legal team. I expected shock. I expected anger at being deceived. I expected my father to share my sense of betrayal. What I got instead was defensiveness. "Brooke has brought valuable insights to this company," James said, his voice tight. "You are young, Wyatt. You do not understand how complex business relationships work at this level. These are investments in future opportunities." "But there are no opportunities materializing," I countered, keeping my voice respectful but firm. "This is not about business relationships. This is about ethics. This is about a clear conflict of interest that crosses the line into fraud." His face reddened. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, Dad. I am trying to protect our company, our family's company." He stood up abruptly, placing his palms flat on the desk. "I vetted those invoices myself. If you have a problem with how I run this business, maybe you need to reconsider your role here. I will look into your concerns, but I do not want you spreading rumors about Brooke." Do I make myself clear? The meeting ended with a tension so thick, it felt like walking through smoke. I left his office with documents still spread across his desk and a sick feeling in my gut. Something was very wrong. My father was not just defending a business decision. He was protecting Brooke personally. The hammer fell the following Monday morning. I arrived at work to find an email summoning me to an emergency meeting. When I walked into the conference room, my father sat at the head of the table with Patricia, our HR manager, beside him. Both wore expressions of grim formality. "Sit down, Wyatt," Patricia said, her voice flat and professional. On the table between us sat a printed document, a formal complaint, filed by Brooke Castellano, against me. I picked it up with numb fingers and read accusations that felt like punches to the stomach. Sexual harassment, creating a hostile work environment, unauthorized access to confidential files, attempting to sabotage her reputation through false allegations. Each charge was more absurd than the last, but they were there in black and white, signed and dated. "Is any of this true?" my father asked. His voice was cold, distant, like I was a stranger he had just met. "Absolutely not," I said, hearing the shock in my own voice. "This is retaliation. Pure retaliation because I reported her fraud." Patricia slid another stack of papers toward me. "Miss Castellano has provided evidence to support her claims. These are emails you allegedly sent with inappropriate comments. We have a statement from a colleague who witnessed your behavior. And our access logs show you have been accessing files outside your normal scope of work." I looked at the emails. They were mine technically, but taken so far out of context that they read like something a different person had written. A joke I had made about a terrible movie became a sexually suggestive comment. A professional disagreement became evidence of hostility. The access logs were accurate. I had accessed those files, but it was entirely within my right and responsibility as operations manager to review financial documents. "This is fabricated," I said, looking directly at my father. "You know me. You know I would never do these things." But I saw doubt in his eyes. Or maybe it was not doubt. Maybe it was something worse. Maybe it was a choice he had already made. Patricia cleared her throat. After consulting with our legal counsel, we have decided to suspend you without pay, effective immediately pending a full investigation. You will need to surrender your laptop, your security badge, and any company property in your possession. You are not to contact any employees during this suspension period. The words felt unreal, like dialogue from a movie I was watching rather than living. My father finally spoke again, his voice carefully neutral. This is standard procedure, Wyatt. We take these allegations seriously. They walked me back to my desk, under the watch of a security guard. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, while colleagues averted their eyes, whispers following me like ghosts. As I was being escorted toward the exit, I caught sight of Brooke standing near her office door. Our eyes met for just a second. She was not quite smiling, but there was something in her expression. Satisfaction. Victory. Before I left, my father pulled me aside in the hallway, out of earshot of the security guard. His face was drawn, older looking than I had ever seen it. If you apologize to Brooke and drop these accusations, we can move past this, he said quietly. We can call it a misunderstanding and get you back to work. But if you keep pushing this, you are forcing my hand. Think about your future here, son. Think about what you are throwing away. I stared at the man who raised me, who taught me about integrity and excellence, and I did not recognize him. Whatever hold Brooke had over him, whether it was fear of scandal, manipulation, or something else entirely, parse, it had transformed him into someone willing to sacrifice his own son to protect a lie. I will not apologize for telling the truth, I said. His jaw tightened. Then you know where the door is. The security guard, an older man named Ray, who had known me since I was a teenager, walked me out in uncomfortable silence. At the door, he leaned close and whispered, "We all know it is garbage, kid. Hang in there." That small kindness was the only thing that kept me from breaking down in the parking lot. The first week of suspension, I barely left my apartment. I would wake up at the time I normally headed to the factory, and then remember I had nowhere to go. The betrayal from my father hurt worse than losing my job. I had expected him to stand beside me. Instead, he had chosen Brooke's lies over my truth. I called my mother, Linda, who had divorced my father years ago, when his obsession with the company consumed everything else in his life. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, and when I finished, her voice was gentle but firm. "Your father has always chosen the business over everything," she said. "Over me, over family dinners, over your baseball games. Do not let him break you the way he broke us. You did the right thing, Wyatt. Do not ever doubt that." Her words helped, but they did not erase the hollow feeling in my chest. I spent days turning over my options. I could apologize, swallow my pride, go back to work, and pretend none of this happened. I could fight this legally, hire a lawyer, drag the company through discovery and depositions. Or I could walk away with my dignity intact and let the truth stand on its own. I knew I would never apologize. That much was certain. But I also could not let Brooke win completely. She had stolen from the company, framed me for harassment, and manipulated my father. If I walked away silently, she would do it again to someone else. That is when I called Derek, a friend from college who had gone to law school and now practiced employment law. We met for coffee at a place far from Sterling and Company's neighborhood. Derek listened to everything, reviewed the evidence I had backed up to my personal devices before surrendering my laptop, and shook his head in disbelief. "You have a case," he said. "A strong one, but corporate legal battles are brutal, especially against family. It could take years and cost you everything you have left." "What if I do not want to fight them in court?" I asked. Derek looked at me thoughtfully. "Then you fight them in the court of public opinion. LinkedIn industry forums, professional networks. Lay out the facts, show the evidence, and let the community decide. It is riskier in some ways, but it is also faster and often more effective. Companies care about reputation." I spent the next week crafting my strategy. I would write a detailed resignation letter that left no room for ambiguity. Then I would compile my evidence into a clear, professional presentation and post it publicly on LinkedIn. No emotional outbursts, no exaggerations, just facts with receipts. The goal was not revenge. It was accountability. 2 weeks after my suspension began, I woke up before dawn on a Monday morning. The city was still dark as I drove to Sterling and Company one last time. I arrived around 6 in the morning, early enough that only the security lights were on inside the building. Ray was at the front desk. He looked up in surprise as I walked in. "Thought you were suspended." "I am," I said. "I just need to get my personal things. 5 minutes." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Take your time, kid. Place is not the same without you." I walked through the empty corridors to my desk. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The family photo of me and my grandfather standing in front of the original factory building the engineering award plaque I had received from an industry association 3 years ago. The coffee mug my mother had given me, with the words, "Keep grinding," printed on the side. I packed each item carefully into a cardboard box. Then I placed the resignation letter in its white envelope on the center of my desk. The letter was brief and professional, but every word was deliberate. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position at Sterling and Company. I cannot continue to work for an organization that values deception over integrity and punishes those who speak truth to power. I will not apologize for doing what was right. I wish the company and its employees all the best, but I must move forward on a path that aligns with my values. I signed it simply Wyatt. I took one last look around the office that had been my second home for 7 years, then walked out into the breaking dawn. From a coffee shop 2 blocks away, I opened my laptop and pulled up LinkedIn. My hands were steady as I typed. The post was titled, "Why I Am Walking Away from My Family's Company," and I structured it carefully. I explained my background at Sterling and Company, my discovery of financial irregularities, my attempt to report them through proper channels, the retaliation I faced, and my decision to resign rather than compromise my integrity. I attached redacted versions of key evidence, enough to prove my claims without violating any legitimate confidentiality concerns. At the end, I wrote, "I am not looking for sympathy or vindication. I am sharing this so that others in similar situations know they are not alone, and so that anyone considering doing business with Sterling and Company can make informed decisions." I tagged relevant industry groups and business ethics pages. Then, with my finger hovering over the post button for just a moment, I clicked. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of views. Comments started flooding in from colleagues, competitors, and complete strangers. People shared their own stories of workplace retaliation. Industry contacts expressed shock and support. Customers of Sterling and Company began asking questions. By 9 in the morning, when most employees were arriving at work, my post had gone viral within our industry. I sat in that coffee shop watching the numbers climb, feeling strangely detached from it all. At Sterling and Company, Brooke Castellano arrived at her usual time of 9:15. She walked through the office with her customary confidence, nodding to employees as she passed. Then she noticed my empty desk. She walked over, spotted the resignation letter, and picked it up with a smirk spreading across her face. "Guess he finally learned his lesson," she said to a nearby colleague, waving the letter like a trophy. Then her phone buzzed. Someone had tagged her in my LinkedIn post. I imagined the color draining from her face as she read it, as she clicked through the evidence I had attached, as she watched the comment count and share numbers climbing exponentially. Her smirk would have vanished, replaced by something close to panic. She ran to my father's office. By that time, the post had been shared over 1,000 times. Howard, the company lawyer, was already rushing through the front doors, his phone pressed to his ear. He burst into James's office where my father was meeting with Brooke. "Tell me he did not post it," Howard said, his face pale. "Tell me this is not public." "Post what?" my father asked, confusion crossing his features. Howard showed him the post on his tablet. I imagined the silence that followed, the weight of realization settling over the room like ash. James would have read every word, seen every piece of evidence, watched the comments from customers and partners expressing concern and disappointment. "Is any of this true?" James finally asked, turning to Brooke. "It is not. It is not how it looks." Brooke stammered. He is twisting everything. He is trying to destroy me because I rejected his advances. But Howard was already shaking his head. Castellano. Consulting. Your brother's company, Miss Castellano. This is fraud. Clear documented fraud. Do you understand what you have done to this company's reputation? The reality crashed over James all at once. His largest customer was probably reading that post right now. His board members, his suppliers, his employees. Everyone was reading about how his director of business development had been stealing from the company, and how his own son had been punished for exposing it. You are terminated, James said to Brooke, his voice hollow, effective immediately. Howard will contact you regarding the legal proceedings. Security will escort you out. Brooke tried to protest, tried to plead her case, but James picked up his phone and called security. Within minutes, Brooke Castellano was being walked out of Sterling and Company, her box of personal items clutched to her chest, her expression no longer smirking, but shocked and pale. The company released a statement by noon Sterling, and company takes allegations of financial impropriety seriously. An employee referenced in recent social media posts is no longer with the company. We are conducting a thorough internal investigation and cooperating fully with authorities. Our commitment to ethical business practices remains unwavering. It was carefully worded corporate speak that admitted nothing and promised everything. Notably, it did not mention me, did not apologize to me, did not acknowledge that they had punished the wrong person. My LinkedIn post reached over 50,000 views in the first 48 hours. Local business journals picked up the story. Industry podcasts discussed it. The narrative had escaped Sterling and Company's control entirely. My father called my phone 17 times that first day. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, late that evening, he left a message. His voice sounded strained, older, defeated. Wyatt, we need to talk. I made a terrible mistake. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. Please call me back. Please. I listened to the voicemail 3 times, feeling nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just a vast emptiness where my relationship with my father used to be. I saved the message, but did not return the call. A week later, Derek contacted me with news. Sterling and Company wanted to settle. Howard, the company lawyer, had reached out with an offer full back pay for my suspension period, a severance package equivalent to 1 year's salary, a neutral employment reference, and a non-disclosure agreement covering the rack. Specifics of my departure. They want to make this go away, Derek explained. The publicity is killing them. They have already lost 2 major contracts because customers do not want the association. Take the money, Wyatt. You have already won the important battle. But I had one condition that was non-negotiable. I will accept the money. I will accept the neutral reference. But I will not sign an NDA. The truth is already public. I will not be silenced about what happened. Derek negotiated on my behalf. The company resisted at first, but ultimately they had no leverage. A lawsuit would mean more publicity, more discovery, more damage. They agreed to my terms. Brooke, meanwhile, was facing criminal investigation for fraud. The company was cooperating with prosecutors to minimize their own liability, throwing her completely under the legal bus she had built for herself. The money helped, but it did not heal the real wound. That first month after leaving Sterling and Company, I grieved the loss of my relationship with my father more than I mourned the job. I spent long afternoons at my mother's house, sitting on her back porch, processing what had happened. You did what your father could not do, Linda told me one evening, as we watched the sunset. You chose principle over profit. You chose truth over comfort. That takes a kind of strength he never developed. Her words helped me see it differently. My father was not a villain. He was a man who had compromised his values slowly over years, making small concessions that eventually added up to something he could no longer recognize. That realization hurt, but it was also strangely liberating. I could let go of expecting him to be someone he was not. I started building a new routine. Morning runs replaced my morning commute. I volunteered at a community workshop teaching young people about manufacturing and engineering. I reconnected with college friends I had lost touch with during my years of 60-hour work weeks. I read books that had sat unread on my shelf for years. Slowly, the heaviness began to lift. LinkedIn messages poured in, job offers from competitors, consulting opportunities, speaking invitations about workplace ethics, and whistleblowing. My story had resonated with people across industries who had faced similar situations and felt powerless. 2 months after my resignation, I received a call from Catherine Rivera, the CEO of Precision Dynamics, one of Sterling and Company's main competitors. She wanted to meet for lunch. We sat in a quiet restaurant downtown while she explained her offer. "I have been following your story," Catherine said. "What you did took courage. It also showed me exactly the kind of person I want leading operations at my company. I am offering you the position of Vice President of Operations with complete autonomy over your department and an equity stake in the company. We need people who will do the right thing, even when it costs them everything." The offer was generous beyond anything I had expected. More importantly, as I toured Precision Dynamics over the following weeks, I saw a company culture built on transparency and accountability. Meetings were open. Decisions were documented. Employees spoke freely, without fear of retaliation. It was everything Sterling and Company should have been. I accepted the position in May. Within weeks, I was implementing changes, building systems, mentoring a team of engineers who actually listened when I spoke, because they respected my expertise, not my last name. For the first time in years, I felt valued for my actual contributions. My personal life improved in unexpected ways, too. At the community workshop where I volunteered, I met Leah, a graphic designer who taught art classes to teenagers. She had a warmth and honesty that I had forgotten could exist in relationships. We started dating slowly, building something real, on a foundation of truth from the very beginning. No pretense, no hidden agendas. Just two people who had been through enough to value authenticity above everything else. 6 months after the entire ordeal, my father showed up at my new office unannounced. Catherine's assistant called to say someone was asking for me in the lobby. When I came down there, he was. James looked older, thinner, with gray in his hair I had not noticed before. "Can we talk?" he asked. We went to a coffee shop nearby, sitting across from each other at a small table by the window. The silence stretched between us until he finally spoke. "I was wrong," James said, his voice rough. "About everything. Brooke manipulated me. She made me doubt you, doubt my own judgment. I chose protecting the company's image over protecting my son, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I understand if you cannot forgive me." I listened without interrupting. Part of me had imagined this conversation 100 times, rehearsing what I would say, how I would make him understand the depth of his betrayal. But sitting there looking at my father's worn face, I felt only a quiet sadness. "I do not need your apology for my sake," I said finally. "I have moved on. I am happy now, Dad, happier than I have been in years. But you need to figure out why you were willing to believe her lies over my truth. Why you valued a few months of business projections over a lifetime of knowing who I am. That is something you owe yourself." "Can we rebuild this?" he asked. "Can we try?" Maybe one day, I told him honestly. But not today. Not next week. Maybe not this year. I need you to understand that trust is not something you inherit. You have to earn it. Just like you always told me. He nodded, slowly accepting the boundary I was drawing. As I stood to leave, he spoke again. "I am proud of you, Wyatt. I should have said that more often when you worked for me. I should have said it every day." I paused at the door. "Thank you. But the truth is, Dad, I am proud of myself now, and that is what really matters." I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because my father had apologized, but because I had finally stopped needing him to validate my choices. Looking back now, I understand what that entire experience taught me. Loyalty does not mean accepting wrongdoing. Family titles do not entitle anyone to compromise their integrity. Walking away from a toxic situation is not failure. It is self-respect. Real success is not measured by corner offices or family legacies. It is measured by whether you can sleep peacefully at night, knowing you did the right thing. Today I am thriving at Precision Dynamics. I have built a team that trusts me because I trust them. I have a relationship with Leah that is built on honesty and mutual respect. I volunteer every week passing on the lessons my grandfather taught me to kids who light up when they learn how to read technical drawings. Sometimes I see news about Sterling and Company. The business survived the scandal, but its reputation remains damaged. Industry insiders still talk about what happened. I feel no satisfaction from that. Only a lingering sadness about what could have been if my father had chosen differently. Here is what I learned, and what I want you to understand. Your dignity is not negotiable. The moment you put a price on it, you have already lost something you can never buy back. I do not know if my father ever truly understood that lesson, but I did, and it set me free. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right? Have you ever had to walk away from something you loved to protect who you are? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe, because we all need reminders that integrity still matters in this world. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to stand up for yourself when your moment comes. Stay strong out there, and remember that you are worth more than any compromise you are being asked to make. Take care.